You wake up and before your eyes even open, you already feel it, the weight. Not just in your body, but in your soul. A heaviness that doesn't go away with rest, sleep, or even a break. You drag yourself through the motions, shower, coffee, responsibilities, pretending that everything is fine. But something inside you knows the truth. This isn't tiredness. This is something deeper, something darker. You are living a life that doesn't belong to you, and it's silently killing you from the inside out. There's a reason why. No matter how much you sleep, you never wake up refreshed. There's a reason why everything feels heavy, even the smallest decisions. It's not laziness, it's not lack of discipline. It's the soul-level fatigue that comes from wearing a mask every single day. The exhaustion that comes from playing a role, fulfilling expectations, performing instead of being. And the longer you do it, the more invisible you become. Not to others, but to yourself. From the moment you were born, the world began shaping you. Parents told you how to behave. Teachers told you who to become. Culture told you what success looks like. And slowly, without even noticing, you stopped being someone and started becoming something. An image, a projection, a version of yourself sculpted by fear, by survival, by the desperate need to be accepted. Carl Jung called this false identity the persona, the mask we wear to function in society. And while it protects us in the beginning, it eventually becomes a prison, because every time you silence your truth to fit in, you abandon your soul. Every time you say yes when you mean no, you fracture your spirit. And now, after years of trying to be who they wanted you to be, you're collapsing under the weight of who you really are. Think back. How many times have you swallowed your emotions just to keep the peace? How often have you faked a smile because being honest felt dangerous? How many times have you stayed in places that drained you because leaving would disappoint someone? You've been trained to be agreeable, to not rock the boat, to put others first. And so you did. And now, you don't even know what your own voice sounds like. But your body remembers. Your body has been holding it all. The tension in your shoulders, the fatigue in your bones, the headaches, the restlessness, the tightness in your chest. That's not random. That's your body screaming what your mouth has been too afraid to say. I can't do this anymore. And the longer you ignore it, the louder it gets. Until eventually, the mask you're wearing begins to crack. And here's what no one tells you. People benefit from your mask. They like you better when you're quiet, agreeable, dependable. They feel safer when you're predictable. They're more comfortable when you don't have needs. But what about you? Who is taking care of you while you take care of everyone else? Who is listening to your silence while you absorb the noise of everyone around you? The answer is no one. Because you taught them not to. You taught them that you're always available, that your needs can wait, that your boundaries are flexible. And now they believe that version of you is real. But it's not. It's a survival strategy. It's a costume you put on to feel loved, to feel safe, to feel seen. But the love you get while wearing a mask never touches your soul, because they're not loving you, they're loving the illusion. This is why you're tired, not because you're doing too much, but because you're being too little of yourself. You are overextended emotionally, mentally, spiritually, not from action, but from suppression. And every day you keep pretending, you pay with your energy, your vitality, your joy, and eventually even your health. So let me ask you something hard. When was the last time you felt like yourself? Not the parent, not the partner, not the employee, not the friend, just you. That quiet place inside that knows what it wants, that remembers who it is, that doesn't need to perform to feel worthy. Has it been months, years? Maybe you can't even remember. That's not failure. That's trauma. That's what happens when survival becomes your identity. If this message resonated with you, I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments. Share how you're learning to reclaim your energy. And don't forget to subscribe so we can keep walking this path together. But here's the truth. Your soul never left. It's still in there, waiting. Waiting for you to stop performing. Waiting for you to stop apologizing. Waiting for you to come home. Carl Jung said that the most terrifying thing is to accept oneself completely. And he was right. Because reclaiming your truth means losing the lies that kept you safe. It means shedding the mask, even when it means standing alone. But you know what's even more terrifying than being alone? Living surrounded by people who only love your mask. This is not about blaming anyone, this is about waking up. Waking up to the fact that your exhaustion isn't a problem to solve. It's a message to understand. Your soul is not tired of life. It's tired of the version of life you've been living. And the moment you start listening to that fatigue, everything changes. It stops being the enemy and starts becoming your guide. So here we are, you, on the edge of truth. Me, asking you to look deeper. Are you tired, or are you suppressed? Are you burned out, or are you grieving the parts of yourself you lost to survival? Are you numb, or are you drowning in everything you've never allowed yourself to feel? Because that's where we're headed next. Into the pain that your body has been holding, into the wounds that your silence created, and into the decision that changes everything. The decision to stop betraying yourself for the comfort of others. Are you ready? You didn't fall into this life by accident. You didn't wake up one day and suddenly feel disconnected from everything you are. It happened slowly, subtly, decision by decision, silence by silence, moment by moment, until one day you looked around and realized you were surviving inside a version of life that no longer reflects who you are. And the reason is as painful as it is true. You're not living from authenticity. You're living from fear. Fear has 1,000 disguises. It pretends to be responsibility. It wears the mask of being realistic. It even calls itself wisdom. But at its core, fear is the voice that says, don't change anything. Don't disappoint anyone. Don't risk being alone. And that voice has been whispering in your ear for years, guiding you not toward fulfillment, but toward compliance. Carl Jung believed that the greatest damage to the soul happens when a person trades their inner truth for outer security. He called this soul loss, and it happens not in explosive moments but in slow erosion. You accepted jobs that numbed you, relationships that used you, expectations that buried you. And every time you said, it's fine, I'll just keep going, you walked one step further away from yourself. Think about it. You probably made most of your big life choices not based on what lit you up, but on what made sense to others. You studied what was practical. You married who seemed stable. You suppressed your creativity because it wasn't profitable. You toned yourself down because your full intensity scared people. And now, even in your moments of stillness, there's a restlessness in your chest, like your soul is knocking, asking to be let out. But here's the paradox. The longer you stay in a life built on fear, the more exhausted you become, and the more afraid you are to leave it. Because when your identity is built around other people's comfort, your liberation feels like betrayal. Betrayal of your family, of your past, of your carefully constructed image. That's why so many people never change. They'd rather die quietly in a life they tolerate than risk being misunderstood in a life they desire. But here's the deeper cost of that decision. Your body is paying for it. Not just your mind, your body. The chronic headaches, the tight chest, the back pain, the insomnia, the anxiety out of nowhere. These are not just medical issues. They are symptoms, manifestations of a nervous system in constant conflict with the truth. Jung didn't separate the psyche from the body. He knew that when your soul is not allowed to speak, it will scream through your skin. Have you ever noticed how you feel completely drained after spending time in certain places or with certain people? That's not coincidence. That's your body alerting you. Because being inauthentic is a full-time job, and the salary is your life force. And yet, you keep going. You show up, you smile, you perform. You convince yourself that it's just a phase, that it'll get better later. But later never comes because you're not changing the source. You're only numbing the symptoms. You take vacations, but the fatigue returns. You switch jobs, but the emptiness stays. You try new routines, new habits, new productivity hacks, but nothing works. Because the problem is not what you're doing. The problem is who you're doing it for. When you live for others, you live outside of yourself. And when you live outside of yourself, you lose access to your own power. That's why you feel like you're always chasing something. That's why peace feels like a myth. That's why you're exhausted even after 8 hours of sleep. Because peace doesn't come from rest. It comes from alignment. From knowing that your time, your energy, your choices are truly yours. But here's the hard truth. Reclaiming your life will break things. It will disrupt routines. It will end relationships. It will disappoint people who only loved the version of you that was convenient. But what's the alternative? Keep pretending, keep performing, keep slowly erasing yourself in exchange for quiet approval? Jung believed that we reach a breaking point, not just emotionally, but existentially. A point where the soul refuses to be silenced any longer. And maybe that's where you are right now. Not just tired, but ready. Ready to look at the life you've built with honest eyes. ready to admit which parts of it are not really yours, ready to stop using fear as a compass. Because fear will keep you breathing, but it will never let you live. So ask yourself, what would change if you stopped asking, "Is this safe?" and started asking, "Is this mine?" What would you walk away from if guilt and fear were no longer in charge? And more importantly, who would you become? That's where we're going next. Into the real cost of constantly showing up for a life that empties you, and how your relationships, your energy, and your physical health begin to collapse when you ignore the quiet grief of betraying yourself. You might not notice it at first. The shift is subtle, barely a whisper, but over time the silence becomes deafening. You start to feel disconnected, not just from the world, but from yourself. You attend the dinners, you answer the calls, you smile when people talk, and yet you walk away feeling emptier than ever. You begin to realize the people around you don't actually know you. They know your responses, your habits, your politeness, but not your truth. And maybe that's not their fault. Maybe it's because you stopped showing up as yourself a long time ago. Maybe you decided, consciously or not, that the real you wasn't safe, that being liked was more important than being known, that being accepted was worth more than being seen. So you adapted. You became who they needed, who they preferred, who made things easier. But in doing so, you vanished. Carl Jung believed that the greatest tragedy of the human experience is the loss of authenticity in exchange for social survival. When you shape your entire personality around being likable, agreeable, and non-threatening, you don't create connection, you create dependency. People don't love you. They love how easy you are to be around, how little you ask for, how predictably you show up and hold space, even when no one holds space for you. And this is where the resentment begins to grow, silently, like a weed in the dark. You start to feel used, even though you keep saying yes. You feel invisible, even when you're surrounded. You feel replaceable, even though you're always available. That's not real connection. That's emotional servitude. Ask yourself this: if you stopped calling, who would notice? If you stopped giving, who would reach back? If you finally spoke your truth, not the polished, edited version, but the raw, untamed, inconvenient one, who would stay? Most people won't. And that's the part no one tells you about healing, that it's not just about discovering who you are. It's about watching who disappears when you stop pretending. It's about losing relationships that were only ever built on your silence, your compliance, your availability. But those losses are not tragedies. They are revelations. They show you, with brutal clarity, who was in love with your mask, not your soul. They show you how much energy you've spent being palatable, and how little of that effort ever returned to you in the form of real care. And when the mask finally begins to fall, when you can no longer carry the weight of being what everyone else wants, you begin to see something shocking. You don't even know who you are without the performance. You start to speak, and your voice shakes, not from weakness, but because it's unfamiliar. You start to ask for what you need, and it feels like a betrayal, not of others, but of the identity you built to survive. That identity was never you. It was a mirror, a projection, a role. And roles don't rest. Roles don't breathe. Roles don't feel, they function. And that's what you've been doing, functioning, for years. Jung warned that we can only find ourselves by separating from the collective, by facing the parts of us that were buried under layers of social conditioning. But here's the cost of that separation. It will make you question everything. It will dismantle the house you built out of others' expectations. It will burn down the bridge between who you are and who you pretended to be. And when the smoke clears, you might find yourself standing in a silence so deep it hurts. A silence where no one checks in, where your phone stops ringing, where the people who once leaned on you now look elsewhere. It feels like rejection, but it's actually purification. What's being removed isn't love. It's dependency. It's manipulation disguised as affection. It's transaction mistaken for intimacy. Let me know in the comments if you've ever felt this kind of exhaustion and what you're doing to reconnect with yourself. And if you're ready for more content like this, be sure to hit subscribe, and what comes next is something rare. In that silence, you begin to hear a voice you forgot existed, your own. A voice that isn't shaped by fear or filtered through approval. A voice that isn't performing, but revealing. You start to say things like, "No, I don't want that," or "That hurts me," or "I need time alone." And those small declarations feel like revolutions, because they are. They're the foundation of self-respect, of real identity, of genuine connection. Some people will resist. They'll accuse you of changing, of becoming selfish. But what they really mean is that you've stopped abandoning yourself for their comfort, and that's what scares them. Not your truth, but their loss of control over who you used to be. And now the question becomes, can you keep going? Can you stay with yourself even when the world starts to shift, even when the people who once loved your silence now call your voice a problem? Because the next part of this journey is even deeper. It's not just emotional, it's physical. Your body has been holding the weight of every betrayal, every unspoken truth, every moment you said yes when your soul screamed no, and now it's breaking under the pressure. In the next part, we'll explore how emotional suppression becomes physical exhaustion, and why your body is the final messenger in a life where your soul has been silenced too long. You've been trying to manage it. You've called it stress, burnout, anxiety. You've told yourself it's just a phase, that everyone feels this way sometimes. But no matter how much rest you get, no matter how many weekends you escape, or how often you promise yourself a reset, it always comes back. The fatigue, the tightness in your chest, the tension in your jaw, the hollow ache behind your eyes, it follows you like a shadow. And that's because it isn't just mental. It isn't just physical. It's your soul, exhausted from being ignored for too long. Carl Jung didn't separate the mind from the body, or the body from the psyche. He believed the body was the voice of the unconscious, the final messenger, when every other signal has been denied. And what your body is trying to say right now, through every symptom, every unexplained pain, every moment of apathy and heaviness, is simple but devastating. I can't do this anymore. You've been running on emotional autopilot, pushing past the signs, powering through, smiling when you're falling apart, laughing when you want to scream, performing when your inner world is collapsing. And now your body is speaking for you because it's the only part of you that refuses to lie. You can silence your truth, but your nervous system doesn't forget. It keeps the score of every self-betrayal. That tightness in your stomach before social interactions, that's not shyness. It's the fear of being seen when you don't know who you are anymore. That insomnia that won't go away, that's not just overthinking, it's your mind trying to process all the parts of you that have been suppressed. That chronic pain, that fatigue, that brain fog, they're not random. They are emotional burdens made physical. Think of your body like a warning system, an alarm designed to wake you up when you've been asleep at the wheel of your own life for too long. And the deeper truth is, your body is not malfunctioning. It's doing exactly what it's supposed to do. It's breaking down under the weight of the lies it's been forced to carry. You've told yourself to stay strong, to keep going, to not make things complicated, but your body isn't confused. Your exhaustion is clarity. It's showing you through breakdown what your mind has tried so hard to avoid. You are living out of alignment with your truth. And no matter how much coffee you drink, how many planners you fill, how many tasks you complete, the ache inside you remains. Because healing doesn't come from doing more. It comes from feeling more, from listening, from finally giving space to the parts of you that have been silenced. And that's where most people get stuck. They want to feel better without feeling. They want peace without confrontation. They want healing without the mess. But your body won't allow it. It demands integration. And integration starts with acknowledging the cost of your silence. The moments you said yes when your soul said no. The days you kept working when you were collapsing inside. The months, maybe years, you stayed in places that made your body scream in discomfort just to be accepted. You thought you were being mature. You thought you were doing what's right. But your body knows the truth, and the truth is, you were abandoning yourself in slow, subtle ways. This is the soul's version of debt. Every time you betray your needs, you go into emotional overdraft. And your body, being the honest accountant that it is, will eventually call in the payment, not to punish you, but to wake you up. Have you ever noticed how certain people seem to drain your energy the moment you're around them? Or how some environments leave you feeling nauseous or irritable without explanation? That's not coincidence. That's your body responding to what your mind has rationalized. The people, the places, the situations that no longer resonate with your spirit are now being processed through your biology. Because your intuition has been speaking, but you've been trained to ignore it. Until your body can't anymore, And the tragedy is that many people will spend years treating the symptoms. They'll take medication for anxiety while staying in a job that suffocates them. They'll see specialists for fatigue while sleeping next to someone who depletes their soul. They'll blame age, hormones, luck, stress, anything but the truth. I am tired because I am not living my life. I am surviving someone else's version of it. Jung believed that real healing, individuation, only begins when we bring consciousness to what has been unconscious, when we face the real reason for the suffering instead of masking it. That's not easy, but neither is living this way, numb to joy, numb to purpose, numb to yourself. And yet you're still here, reading, listening, searching, which means there's still a voice inside of you that remembers who you were before the world told you who to be, a part of you that hasn't given up. That still wants to breathe fully, speak honestly, move freely. That part of you is waiting, and your body is holding the door open. So ask yourself now, not with judgment, but with deep honesty, what has my body been trying to tell me that I've been too afraid to hear? Because in the next part, we go deeper into the final question, the one that terrifies and frees you at the same time. What happens when you finally stop performing and start becoming? You've spent years believing that your exhaustion was normal, that everyone feels this way, that it's just part of being an adult in a chaotic world. But there's a part of you, quiet, buried, but alive, that knows this isn't true. This kind of tired doesn't come from working hard. It comes from abandoning yourself, from living for others, from being available to everything and everyone but your own soul. And that part of you, the one that's been watching all this happen from behind the mask, is done being silent. Healing doesn't begin with a vacation. It doesn't start when things calm down. It begins the moment you stop betraying yourself, the moment you decide that your energy is sacred, that your time, your peace, your needs, they matter. But here's what no one tells you. Choosing yourself will break things. It will break patterns. It will break expectations. It will break relationships built on the version of you that never said no. At first, you'll feel selfish. You'll feel guilty. You'll worry that you're becoming cold, distant, arrogant. But what you're really doing is detoxing from a lifetime of emotional overextension. You're learning that boundaries are not rejection. They're recognition. Recognition that your soul has limits, that your nervous system deserves safety, that your identity is more than your usefulness. Carl Jung believed that individuation, the process of becoming whole, requires separation. Separation from roles, from illusions, from identities we adopted to survive. And this separation can be disorienting. Suddenly you don't know how to respond. You hesitate before saying yes. You pause before explaining yourself. You begin to choose stillness over reaction. And in those pauses, in that silence, something begins to return. You start to feel things again, not the overwhelming, chaotic emotions that once controlled you, but something deeper. Presence, integrity, clarity. You stop reaching for people who drain you. You stop justifying your pain. You stop bending yourself to fit into places you've outgrown. And the fatigue that once felt permanent begins to fade. Not all at once, but gradually, as your soul starts to feel safe again inside your own body. Drop a comment below with what part of this video spoke to you the most. Your voice matters here. And if you haven't already, subscribe to join a community that honors growth, truth, and healing. And yes, the world might not applaud this new you. It might even resist. People will miss the version of you that said yes before thinking, that smiled while breaking, that made everyone comfortable at your own expense. But you won't miss them. Because now you're meeting people who love your no as much as your yes, people who don't need you to dim your light to stay close, people who see your energy as a gift, not a resource to exploit. And more than that, you're starting to see yourself, not as broken, not as weak, but as someone who survived long enough to finally reclaim their truth. You see that your tiredness wasn't a flaw, it was a compass, a divine signal, the body's final language when the soul has been ignored for too long. And that signal brought you here. So what happens now? Now you live on purpose. You become selective with your time. You honor your intuition. You set boundaries not as walls, but as gates to protect your sacred ground. You breathe deeper, walk slower, listen more. You realize that being enough was never the goal, being whole was. And that wholeness doesn't come from doing more, it comes from coming home to yourself. If you've made it this far, I want to thank you. Not just for watching, but for choosing yourself in a world that constantly asks you not to. Thank you for sitting with the discomfort, for facing the truth, for not looking away. That choice changes everything. And if this video spoke to something deep inside of you, don't stop here. The journey back to yourself is layered. The next video on your screen will take you even deeper into this path, where we explore how silence, solitude, and sovereignty become the foundation of real peace. I'll see you there.